Hi, everyone. While participants start linking into the Zoom call, just hold on tight and we'll get started in a few. Hope everyone has been enjoying the sessions and also taking breaks from them and stepping outside if they have the chance, get some sun, some fresh air. And thank you to everyone who's been super active on Workplace and on Twitter and on Instagram. I'm seeing everything. We're trying to get to everything. So it's really, really awesome to see so many folks from across the nation come together on Twitter and social media and share and let us know what your setups are like and how you're tuning into SUNY Spectrum this year. And we're very thankful for it. So it is now 4 o'clock and we can go ahead and get started. Hello, folks. My name is Delcy Hoya Reyes. I use the pronouns she, her, hers, and they, them. And I'm a staff associate for the SUNY's Got Your Back program. Thank you all so much for attending SUNY Spectrum this year. We know it has been quite the adjustment to becoming virtual, and it's been very different for everyone. So we're very thankful for everyone that is here and still actively being part of these virtual spaces while also doing the work that is so desperately needed, especially during the time that our nation is facing in. This session is a critical conversation at the intersection of Black Lives Matter and the LGBTQIA, and will run from 4 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. Before we begin, just a few quick notes regarding today's session. Sessions are being recorded and will be sent out on demand to all registrants following the session. We are also providing closed captioning as well. And that is in live time and available at the bottom of the screen. While we are disappointed that we are unable to be with everyone in person, we are hoping that we can increase participation among registrants in a couple of different ways. You could use the hashtag SUNY Spectrum or tag us at SUNY's Got Your Back on all social medias, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram over the course of the week to share your thoughts and experiences throughout SUNY Spectrum. We also have Facebook workplace group in an effort to create an ongoing dialogue and greater sense of community virtually, of course. We have created a Facebook workspace group for SUNY Spectrum attendees. Use this space to share your thoughts and engage in conversations with colleagues across the country and Canada about what you hear today and ways to better support students during such times. If you hadn't had a chance to join and need access to the group, please feel free to email spectrum@suny.edu, and we will be able to assist you. With that, I am pleased to welcome Dr. Karen A. Jones, who will be formally convening today's session.
Thank you, Delcy. My name is Karen Jones, and I serve as the Vice President for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Binghamton University. I want to thank everyone for joining us this afternoon, and I especially want to thank our guests who are speaking with us this afternoon. And so this afternoon we have Zeke Thomas, he, him, and his, who's a human rights advocate, DJ, producer, and a TV host. We also have Dee Smith, she, her, and hers, who's a two-time Grammy-nominated producer and artist. We also have Hope Giselle, she, her, and hers, who's a national organizer, author, artist, and activist. We also have Antuan Magic Raimone, he, him, and his, who's played in Hamilton the musical, Tedx, a speaker, soldier of love, my survivor journey. And last but certainly not least, we have my dear colleague, Dr. Kelly Clark, she, her, and hers, who's a Q Center director at Binghamton University. And we want to have this conversation today because more often than not, we're not talking about the lives who are lost during our Black Lives Matter, which is the LGBTQIA plus community. And so this afternoon, we're going to turn it over to our moderator, Dr. Kelly Clark, who will pose the questions and conversations to our panelists. And I want to thank everyone for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Karen.
I have to say that I am so super excited for this conversation today. But before we get started, I want to squarely situate what we're going to have a conversation about in the context of the conference. SUNY Spectrum, it was started 3 years ago to really bring attention to intimate personal violence, that's rape, sexual assault, dating violence, domestic violence, stalking, harassment, specifically within LGBTQ college communities across the country. And so I think it's important for us to just really make no mistake about the fact that the racism, the sexism, the homophobia and transphobia that our students experience on campuses across the country is clearly connected, part of a continuum of violence that allows intimate personal violence and victimization to happen. And so it's important for us to think about the fact that if there is racism and homophobia and transphobia, and I am afraid to come out as a student, that an abuser can use that against me, right? I'll tell your professors, I'll tell your parents, I'll tell the dean, I'll tell where you are employed. And so the conversation that we're going to have today is going to be a broad conversation about the intersections of Black Lives Matter and LGBTQIA plus communities, but it also needs to come back to the real focus of this campus, because by dismantling some of the things that we're going to talk about today, it actually does make life safer for LGBTQ students on our college campuses who may fall victim largely due to the homophobia, racism, sexism, and transphobia that we are experiencing. So I think it's important. And when we wrap up, we're going to come back to how we can address things on our college campus. So to get started with our conversation, and I just want to let people know that we're going to really try to have a conversation today. I know that it's a little bit difficult maybe over this platform, but we didn't want to just do a Q&A. So the panelists are really going to kind of engage in a rich conversation. We've been talking a little bit already about some of these issues. And I want to just start off talking about this concept of the power at this intersection, the intersection of Black and queer. We know there are so many heroes of ours, Bayard Rustin from the Civil Rights Movement, right? Marsha P. Johnson from Stonewall and the Gay Liberation Movement. Of course, we have Stormy DeLaviere, and we have Patrice Culler and Alicia Garza, of course, from Black Lives Matter movements. We could name many more, Audre Lorde, James Baldwin, right? We could go on to talk about Black queer folks who have been monumental at the front of really important movements in our modern times. I want to ask the question of the panelists. This suggests to me that there's something special about this intersection, that there's some kind of specialness about the consciousness of Black queer folks that makes us uniquely able to address some of these issues, to find a voice and to be powerful. What do you think that is?
Well, there's definitely something special. And what I first want to say is the most special thing is that we're Black before we're queer. That's the real part. That's what we have to deal with on an everyday basis from birth. Growing into our identity as queer people, that's where the term intersection is now comes from. And I think that it does give us an advantage and a disadvantage. The advantage being that we can play on both sides of marginalization. We can play on both sides. I can empathize with my white and or Latin and or other races, brothers and sisters who are queer in terms of that struggle. I can also empathize in terms of the disadvantages that happen just in terms of socioeconomically. Like when you look at COVID, look at the times we're in right now. Look at unemployment. Look at COVID. Look at, you know, all the shit. Excuse me, SUNY. Look at it. It's people of color who have been disproportionately affected, and queer people in that intersection who then get that extra layer on top of it. And trans people of color and Black women, queer Black women of color, that totem pole of, you know, white cis man, da 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 da, that doesn't change just because, you know, somebody may or may not be able to empathize with your situation in terms of whether that's race, socioeconomic, and whatnot. The disadvantage in that, bringing it back around, is again, we're Black. And at that root cause means that we are always fighting for votes, or not votes, just to be heard, just for rights. You know, we aren't born with birthrights. We aren't born with the right to vote. We got to fight for that. We aren't born with the right for equal health care. We got to fight for that. We aren't born with the right to money. What's that called? You know, Dr.
Wealth.
Kelly Clark. Yeah, there you go, Antuan. Yes. See, I'm gonna take your job with that singing voice. D's about to come for me like you can't sing. But that is truly, when you break it down from an institutional standpoint, all of us sitting here are Black and grew up Black. Meaning, so in this United States caste system that we live in terms of white, Black, other, we are Black. Which means we don't get that ish.
Honestly, I think that there's a lot of nuance to being at an intersection of a multitude of communities, being a Black trans woman, being a Black gay man, being, a Black lesbian woman, a Black intersex. All of those things kind of intertwine themselves. But I think that what we have to realize is that there needs to be a conversation that is explicitly had about our Blackness. We oftentimes have these conversations where we skate around talking about Blackness because that's what we've been socialized to do, right? That's why, you have these white people that sat up in a room and came up with people of color, right? And what I like to remind people that is just it's a construct to make sure that we are putting Blackness at the bottom of the conversation yet again. When we're talking about people of color in the construct of business, organization, social structure, financial literacy, we're talking about ways in which to make sure that the Black issues and Black struggle go at the bottom of that list while still being able to say we're encompassing other people who are not white. And so I want to make sure that when we bring in this space and we're explicitly asked questions about Black people, that we are able to center that and do so unapologetically. I think that the special thing about us, to answer your initial question, Dr. Clark, is that we know how to do those things, and we know how to do those things with grace. I think that as people who have stood at the intersections, we've been able to grin and bear our way through a multitude of the lesser hand syndrome. And we've been able to do so and still become successful. We've been able to do so and fight our way through a lot of those intersections. But what I do want to challenge is the idea that when you are queer and Black, and when you are navigating those systems, sometimes the things that make you special are also the things that do create a rift in how far you're able to go with those things, right? And so the things that make us special are the things that ultimately hold us back in some spaces in some ways. But I think that a lot of the reason why they make us special is because we ultimately fight through them, get past them, and become, whatever it is that we seek to become anyway.
And to add to what Hope said, in the sense of like what makes us special is for however long that journey was for each of us to get to our own personal truth, we had to fight through all of the fear and negativity that was put upon us by our communities, by our Black communities, and then by the larger community of the world. So we had to fight through that to get to our personal truth. And then once we found our personal truth, we were able to stand in the light and the beauty and the brightness of that and that is something that a lot of the rest of the world, they may never have that process for themselves, because they're going to see themselves represented en masse in every area of the world that exists. So they don't have to think, who am I? Because I can look in this magazine and see this white face. I can look in the magazine and see this thing, look on TV, look in music, all of those things. Whereas for us, we have to find that within ourselves first, because it's not presented to us. We don't have those examples. And there's a fortitude and a strength and a power that is developed from that process that we have to go through, so that once we get there, then it's like, okay, well, yeah, I get the world is not going to take me for who I am. And in many places, my own community and own intimate households will not take me for who I am. But damn it, I know who I am, and I know that I am worthy and I have value. And so I'm going to live the life that I need to live at the best of my ability, at the truest of my ability. And that is, that's just something, it's, trial by fire. That's something so many people will never have to do or deal with in their lives. And so that is probably why we see so many of us at the forefront of these movements of, being either the backbone, the kindling, the spark, whatever that is because it's like, okay, well, I've already fought through the pains of myself, my own mindset, to get out of that, to feel healthy and empowered with who I am. Now I can empower other people. And I think that's a big thing, is that so many people aren't able to empower others because they have not yet figured out how to empower themselves.
I actually, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, for me, and I'm sure a lot of, or most queer people, from children, we develop a great sense of empathy and sensitivity. And when I say sensitivity, I don't mean we cry all day. We just develop this high sense of know and knowledge and observation. And I don't mean to sound whimsical, but we're very special people. We're very, it's almost a spiritual thing with queer people. Sometimes things are overshadowed because of stereotypes or stigmas that are thrown on our lives. But from a child, I've always been able to sit back and recognize when someone is sad, when someone is in need, when someone needs a hug, or when someone is not a good person. And we grow into that. And sometimes these feelings and these gifts are dismantled because of abuse or rejection or just simply negative life experiences, right? So I think on the bigger scale, the ones that are strong enough to make it into adulthood and take these gifts, we apply it the same way we did as children. But, I would be, well, I'll just say this. I think that we're all born with that. And that's what makes us special. And that's what makes us queer, and that's the gift that we have to give to the world. And unfortunately, most people don't give us an opportunity to bring that to the table.
Yes, I want to bring it back around to where Zeke started with this idea of being Black first, right? That's your first awareness, your first understanding, and quite frankly, something that is you're not able to hide from. There's no closet, right, for our Blackness. And so being forced to deal with that first, and then growing into an understanding of who we are, and recognizing that not everyone makes it, right? So not everyone is the James Baldwin. Not everyone is the, Barbara Jordan. Not everyone founds Black Lives Matter. But for those of us who can make that integration, I think the way that Zeke was talking about, that there is a great deal of power in the process, as Raimone said. So yes, thank you for that. I do want to recognize that there are many of us who don't make it that far, right? For circumstances of our birth, for circumstances of our education, of our world, who don't get to develop that voice. But there's something magical, it seems to me, when you are able to get there, that really does provide the kindling for a lot of the movements that we've had. So I'm going to come around to this notion then of, we were at the forefront of the civil rights movement in the 60s. We were at the forefront of the gay liberation movement in the 70s after Stonewall. And yet, as Zeke talked about, we're kind of still at the bottom of the totem pole.
Well, let's just be honest about it. Let's just be honest about it and rip the Band-Aid off.
Go for it.
As Black people, and I will speak for myself, and at least some of my friends and whatnot. But as Black people, we have been put at the back of the queer movement, even though if we get our rights, we lift everybody up. Mm-hmm. And that's the frustration over time when our white brothers and sisters can look and say, oh yeah, that sucks, man, or oh yeah, but that's and there's gay Trumpers. That's mind-blowing to me that there are gay Trumpers, but I understand that they are just comfortable accepting, okay, I'm white. When I walk into the room, I'm still white. And especially white gay men, when they walk into the room, it's like, okay, just another day. Now, women, it goes down and, we talk about the hierarchy, but we have been fighting for equality forever. And the other day we celebrated, women's suffrage, women's right to vote. That was white women's right to vote, and it was mostly Black women and queer people, Black queer people at the front of that movement. And then we had to wait, I think it was another, 40 years. But it seems like, we still don't really got the right to vote, Dr. Clark. I mean, with all the voter suppression that's going on, I just want to point out to people that this post office stuff it's not a game. Like, it's not, my Amazon's late. No, this is stuff that they have been doing to disenfranchise us to not be able to vote since the dawn of time, because we are comfortable in a white supremacy type system. And everybody always says, oh, the angry Black people, the angry Black man, the angry Black woman. It's a fear tactic that you think that, or that white people in that mindset believe that, oh, we want revenge. We don't want revenge. I could give two F's about no revenge. Mm-hmm. I just want equality. And in that equality, I bet you I will lift you up as my brother, as my sister. And I'm not going to hold it against you that for about, 30, I'm 32 years old. So, okay, let's see. When did I get comfortable? 13? So let's say, about, X amount of years, you've been holding me back. And I've been looking at you like, come on, man, you see what's going on. Y'all got gay marriage and act like, oh, we won, touchdown. Y'all feel safe now with Trump?
I see Antuan kind of shaking his head. What about that? What about gay marriage? What about the civil rights movement? What about us having, one of the highest murder rates in the country among Black trans women? Black trans women are at the front. Black queer women are at the front. Why is it that these gains are not getting to those people who have been pushing for them?
I will say that it is because there's a lack of vision in humanity. There's a lack of seeing oneself in another, especially if the person they're looking at does not reflect their gender, their race, their background in whatever form that might be. And I am just as guilty as that. My vision of awareness globally, like so many of us, it has expanded so much in these months of the pandemic. And I've been aware of the violence that has existed against the Black community. But specifically, that awareness was focused on Black men. Why? Because of the media. Like, that's what I saw growing up. Those are the stories that made the headlines. This Black man got shot, taking it back to Rodney King. And I was a kid at that time. And so from that moment forward to now, I accepted what had been shown to me. My day-to-day did not include gun violence. My mother moved us to the suburbs when I was a baby, and that was intentional. That was a choice she made. And I have enjoyed the privileges of that move from toddlerhood to my adulthood. And so it has distanced me from the realization and understanding that in the eyes of many, my life is and could be far less valuable. Even though I haven't had many, if any, interactions or negative interactions with the police. But also there's been that continual conversation for me of, okay, how am I dressed? How am I carrying myself? Does my body language change when I find myself in the space of police officers or predominantly non-Black spaces? What is that? How do I, all of those things, those many, many ways of code switching. And it's like you code switch within a code switch as a queer person. And so I just think, to boil it down to it, like the tiniest mustard seed, it's when we fail and choose to not see humanity in someone else, we fail humanity. Because it's at the end of the day, our hearts beat together. We breathe together. And yes, there are so many ways that we are different. And at the end of the day, we are all human beings. And it's a choice to see someone you don't know, someone you may not agree with, as a human being. And it's a hard-ass choice to make, because you have to then be honest with yourself about what's important to you. Your bottom line, what you want to do, or how you live in this world, and what is the energy you put into that world, and if you're responsible for that or not.
What I want to flag really quickly is that when there are two Black trans women here that I think are qualified to answer a question about the deaths of Black trans women, it goes to show the ways in which our voices are usually kind of sort of overlooked in this space. But then also, I think that was a beautiful answer, but it spoke nothing to the existence or to the plight that Dr. Clark asked about, which was your voice and your stance on Black trans women being murdered and being at the highest rate in the country right now. We've been labeled an epidemic, and the fact that did not even come up is one of those things that goes to show people that those are the intersections that Black trans women sit on, even within our own community. And I think a lot of it is just because people who are outside of our diaspora don't even understand what that's like. They don't know what it's like to be Black and to be a woman and to be trans and to have everyone around you say to you countless numbers of times that they don't get it. They don't understand that they're trying to learn, that they just need more time. And it's just like, well, how many more examples do you need? You know, when there are week after week, month after month, one of our women are being beaten, being, you know, killed in the very communities that you all claim to love and uphold. I hear a lot about this Blackness and a lot about this love for Blackness, but Black trans women are Black women. And there's not even research being done within our communities, both gay, straight, or indifferent, that say that people value the lives of Black trans women and value our voices in a way to even be able to speak to it. To be able to say, if nothing else, that it sucks that Black trans women have to walk out of their doors in fear. To be able to just say that it sucks that pretty privilege and passing privilege and the dynamics of patriarchal views of femininity affect the ways that Black trans women are able to maneuver through life. It sucks that people can't say, or people aren't really acknowledging that up until about 2 months ago, that trans people could be fired simply for being trans. And these are the things, and these are the reasons, and these are the situations that lead trans women into dangerous, life-threatening situations that get us killed in a lot of cases. And these are the conditions by which Black trans women have to live. And these are the things that we have to work on, not just, you know, as Black people, but as an entire community, to understand why Black women are not only at the lowest of the totem pole of Black people, but why we're at the lowest of the totem pole of humanity. And it's because it's not that media sensationalizes the deaths of Black men. It's that the Black community sensationalizes the deaths of Black men. And media says, well, if that's what they care about, then that's what we're going to talk about. Media only, you know, media amplifies the things that they see people talking about. And it's important that we do that same work with the deaths of Black trans women so that that can also become a focus of the Black community. Because until then, we're going to continue to get answers where people skate over the lives because they don't understand the lives to begin with.
Thank you so much for that, Hope. And I am so appreciative to be called out. Thank you.
I
Thank
want
you.
to just elaborate because it is something that I've been discussing in my own household. You know, throughout this time, you know, we're watching people die. We're watching people be murdered, and we have to take accountability for that in our own community as Black people. And as Black men who are the biggest perpetrator of killing Black trans women, we have to take accountability for that. Now, I'm not
We also need to think about why are Black men killing trans women? That in itself it's mind-blowing, and it will fuck a lot of people's head up if they took the time to learn how Black men prey on trans women, manipulate trans women, lie to trans women, lie to their wives, live completely different lives, you know, and secret lives, and use trans women as subjects, as tools and toys and secrets. You know, I fell in love with a man, and we were dating for a year. He moved in with me, and to be honest, I'm gonna say it. He's a celebrity. He's a singer. Everyone knows him. He's beautiful. I'm not gonna disclose him. That's not my style. But he left me because he's married and he has a family, and I didn't know this. And the more trans people make trailblaze, the more we trailblaze, and the more we make awareness an issue and make it an important make it important in our community, these men separate themselves more, you know. And me, for example, I've never been to jail. I've never been in a fight in my life. I've done everything right. I've won all kind of wars all over the world. You know, I've done everything right. At one point, I was a millionaire. I had a beautiful car, beautiful, everything I've earned. I've never had to do things to compromise my integrity. And as soon as I became brave enough, smart enough to claim who I am publicly, everything changed. So people clock, quote unquote, a trans girl and make them a target. Verbally, physically, they have to make an example of trans women. No one knows the journey that is taken to become the woman that you are as a trans woman. It is very difficult. It's nothing glamorous about being a trans woman. It's not. And I don't know, from back in the 40s and the 50s, people have created this narrative about trans women that is very difficult to shake off. Not every trans woman is a sex worker. Not every trans woman is you know, just sleeping with someone's husband. Not every trans woman is these things. I don't know trans women like that. It's like every Black man doesn't play basketball. It's like this thing that is just like stamped on transgender women that is very difficult to shake off, you know, from Black people. Black people are the most unforgiving people on each other, not just against the LGBT community. We're so mad at each other. We just don't support each other. And I'm sorry to be the party pooper and the bearer of bad news, but even my own family, it's like, how could I convince a man on the street to respect me when I haven't seen my father in 5 years because he doesn't appreciate who I am? It's everywhere. So
I feel like there's something very threatening in the self-actualization that queer Black folks have, and it's probably especially threatening with regard to that self-actualization of Black trans women, right? Because we are so very cutthroat in our society. Keeping up with the Joneses is a real thing. I think media certainly plays into that. And so when you see someone who you can't bring yourself to hold any humanity for, doing well, proclaiming, right, their God-given right to live their gifts openly, that has got to be maddening for certain people who haven't been able to figure out how to get there themselves. And certainly the person that I believe should be underneath me, the person that I don't even hold really as human, should not be in a place that is so self-actualized. If I can't get there, then how dare you be, you know, a person to get there before me? And so I think that I come back to this notion of the colonization, not just of our land, right, but not just of our bodies, but of our minds. Like there is a real price to pay for the enslavement of Black people, for the degradation of Black people, for the lowering of Black people, for the elevation of white folks and, you know, and others that we pay a dear price for within our community. Yeah, I'm preparing to teach a class of LGBTQ history as part of it, and we are going to dive into the colonization of gender, right? And so that European notion of gender came with, this is not something that we historically had. I think that people would be very surprised to even learn that in some cultures, the notion of gender just wasn't even a thing. There were just different kinds of people, but it was never broken down by this kind of myth of gender. And
well, there are different, you know, we play the color game. So color game,
Yeah.
the gender game.
Yep. And
It's
if we
all,
just if we had a sense of how to come back to ourselves truly, that we could shed some of what's been colonized into us, that we would have this opportunity to really come back into our humanity.
What do you mean when you say come back to ourselves? You mean as Black people?
As Black people.
That's amazing.
As you know, so if you were to think about our Indigenous Blackness, right? I know that that word is not necessarily used very often with regard to Black people, but all people were Indigenous at some point, right? And you know, coming back into that understanding that so much of our mindset is coming from outside of our traditional cultures, and that the kinds of I don't know, battles that happen within the Black community are really imposed from the outside, that we've been going through it for so many centuries now that we don't recognize it as something that's foreign to us because it's kind of embedded in our communities. But this whole notion of, you know, trans and homophobia and even gender violence within the Black community is not necessarily something that was indigenous to our African cultures, right? This was imposed on us from the outside. I want to go back to the original question though, because I'm thinking that there's an opportunity maybe in this moment. We can learn from history, right? We saw that the civil rights movement certainly created opportunities for Black folks in this country that not all queer Black folks have been able to take advantage of. We saw that the queer liberation or gay liberation movement of the 70s created opportunities for LGBTQ folks, even up until the recent Supreme Court decision, right, that still not all Black queer folks are able to take advantage of. And we are right now in the middle of this next wave of fighting for rights again with the Black Lives Matter movement. And I'm wondering, how do we learn from those two movements of the past so that as we are being led by two queer women in this movement, that queer Black folks actually have an opportunity to actually reap the benefits of the things that are coming out of this summer has proven to be very different. You know, I was telling people 2 years ago, I'm tired of protesting. Protesting is, I'm just so tired of it. I think this summer we see that the protesting that has happened and the indignation that people have around the killings that we've witnessed has actually translated into some modicum of, I don't want to say real change yet, because I don't know that it's definitely there, but there's different conversations happening.
Policy change, but I think even Dr. Clark, it's not even just the protesting. Definitely, I mean, when you go back to civil rights movement, you talk about the 70s, you go back, yes, protesting has had an impact, but I think the biggest impact that we're noticing in this time is, you know, social media. These protests are being watched by the world, not just, you know, us internally. And it is the global lens. I feel without the global lens shining its light on the United States and saying, WTF, I thought y'all were, you know, promoting, you know, everything that is free and great in the United States. And, you know, around the world, it is joked about, you know, we have this view of American exceptionalism, which, you know, it's not for real. But at the same time, I definitely know that a lot of places, a lot of my friends always like, wait, y'all don't have that right yet? Wait, that's still a thing here? Like, you know, gun control and even gay marriage. Like, some of my Australian friends were like, for real? I'm like, yeah, that's just in one state. Or, yeah, that's just like, so change takes time. But the interesting thing about the United States is we have gotten so comfortable in minimal change. Like, you know, okay, here's a crumb. Here's a crumb. Look what we did. Like, when, I don't know who watched, you know, the Klan convention last night, but when Nikki Haley, former governor of South Carolina and former national or former ambassador to the United Nations, she literally said this: racism is over. I made it. I was baffled that she's a brown woman, you know, she's had her plight. She's a woman. She's had her, you know, kudos to her for rising above it. You had your struggle. Nobody is taking away your struggle. But for you to say, all y'all good, what you talking about? That is.
So here's my question to the panel. How do we seek to not repeat what has happened with these last two movements? How do we keep queer Black people not only at the forefront of the Black Lives Matter movement, but actually reaping the benefits of what might come from this summer and into the future? What is the dynamic that needs to change here so that we're not forgotten again in this next wave of civil rights movements?
Integration, right? I think that integration is the thing that's going to save us. What's been happening with the Black community is that we all have all of these separate movements and separate motions and actions that all add up to the same, result. We all want the same sort of results, just for each different subset. And I think that by having some sort of like Black caucus, right, a real Black caucus, a Black conversation that encompasses all portions of the Blackness that, colors the world, we'll be able to come up with actions that suit everyone. But that there has to be that sort of intersectional conversation, intersectional understanding around the ways in which we all function, right? So we can't just have Tamika Mallory and Linda Sour's Until Freedom over here, and then Black Lives Matter over there, and then Al Sharpton in the March over here. I think that there needs to be one driving sort of force, right? That helps us so that when we do get this grand seat at the table, right? When they finally concede and they finally say, okay, fine, what do you want, right? There's not just, we want you to stop killing Black men, because that's not just what we want. Like, we want more than that. There are so many more nuances, and there's a plethora of other things that Black people want, and not even just want, but I think that there's a plethora of things that Black people need and require in order to continue to survive what we now know as like the Trump America, and what's going to continue to be a very conservative America, regardless of Trump's, presidency or, him, losing the platform. A lot of the work is going to have to fall on queer people to also make sure that we don't do what we have done in the past, which is say, this movement is bigger than ours, and so let's be respectful and step back. Because I think that that's a thing that a lot of us have done in the past, and that's what we do. We see it all the time with, Black men, like, even when he's done something wrong. We saw that with Megan Thee Stallion, where it's just like, but I know how Black men are treated in America, and so I'm not going to say anything. And I think that, Black queer people, we know how Blackness is perceived in America, and in some sort of small scale, we've all been sort of pigeonholed into this idea of believing that our queer issues pale in comparison, when really they have the same consequences. And so they need to hold the same sort of importance when we step to the table. And as queer people, we're going to have to not only integrate, but stand by that integration and say, hey, while these things are important, these things are also important as well. And I'm not leaving until we come to an agreement that they're both going to be discussed.
Yes, and I not only do we sometimes feel that they pale, but I think we also have our own internalized homophobia and transphobia, and we also can tend to fall into that, well, if I bring my issues to the table, it's going to have too much dirty laundry and the entire movement will fail because I'm somehow tainting the conversation with the needs that I have. And so therefore I'm going to step back for the good of everyone, but that is a lot of internalized of our own oppression, right? And so for us to really be able to stand firm and to insist on being seen, I've worked with some folks recently who are queer folks of color, I'll just say broadly, who you cannot find anything about that in their bio, right? And so I need you to proclaim that. Like, you have got this platform, and yet I have to ask your agent, I thought that they had a queer platform, but I can't find anything in their bio about this, right? So I think that's so important. I agree with you. Other folks, like, how do we make the Black Lives Matter continue to be integrated with our issues?
I think one of the most interesting things that watching during this time is, the authenticity and the non-authenticity of certain corporations or certain LGBT charitable organizations and or publicity organizations being very tone deaf to the movement. And when I say the movement, or any of us reference the movement begins, and to me ends, with Black women and Black trans women. Like, if that isn't solved, and we haven't done anything, because that to me is okay. Let's see what happens now. Because until we get to that point of y'all truly not just commodifying it, or calling us during Pride, or calling us when somebody got killed, or calling us when we're protesting, until you are even willing to pay for our services and not expect us just to educate you just because, or perform just because we're bringing awareness, yet you got that $1 billion budget that you gonna give me or the movement like a $10,000 crumb, and then throw a festival
where you honor Naomi Campbell.
Okay.
I mean, Zeke, let's go there. If you're going to put it on the table, let's go there. I think that it's one of those things where we've constantly seen these organizations and these brands and all of these people seek the bodies and the knowledge and the experiences of Black and brown trans people, queer people during these certain months when they can commodify it. And then when it comes time to actually show and prove and actually pay that homage and that give that appreciation back, we're seeing them throw entire balls for Beyonce. Beyonce does not need a ball. Naomi Campbell does not need an award for queerness. You have all of these people that they are giving this money to readily available. And one of my close friends is India Moore. And one of the things that I love about them is that they were invited to a ceremony where they wanted to honor India. And India was like, well, with the money that you guys are going to spend to put me on a first class flight, put me in this super nice hotel, just like send me the award that's going to cost you like $25 to print up my name, and give that money to Black trans women in that area. Like, I'm fine. Pose pays me well. Like, I don't need, to come down there and, pay have a stylist and get a car and all of these things, when that money can go back into the community. And I think that a lot of these organizations, when given the opportunities to do those things, or at least honor the right people, they miss the mark. And then when called out about how they missed the mark, rather than them rectifying the situation, they ignore the voices of the people. They call you problematic. They try and blackball you from the movement. They try to blackball, activists and organizers from speaking up about it, rather than just saying, you know what, we hear you and we're going to do better. And this is, I think, in this moment right now, for all of you that are listening that work for those organizations that who I'm talking about, go back to them and let them know, we see you. We see the balls and the galas and the award ceremonies. We see all of these people who have done nil to none for LGBT people outside of show up at a couple of balls in Atlanta and New York, outside of make a couple of club anthems. We see how you are honoring these people rather than honoring the grassroots folks that are actually making it possible for organizations like yours to even be standing. And we want you to acknowledge the idea that for so long, you have not given the roses to the people that actually deserve them.
And Hope, when we're actually even in the room at the galas, we see the amount of money that is raised off of honoring said individuals, and then all of a sudden, it's what, trickle down economics. We still waiting for that trickle.
It gets sucked right out of the community. It gets taken right out of our community, and it goes towards important work, but it's work that is not touching
being done by us,
right? Mm-hmm. It's not work that is coming back, and it's in the same way as we're leading the movements.
Yes.
You know, this money is not reaching, so they're taking the wealth out of local communities where that money could be spent helping Black trans women who are not able to find work, who are not able to find healthcare, who are not able to find educational opportunities, right? For students who are being pushed out of middle schools and high schools and therefore are never going to have a college degree because they couldn't even get through middle school because of the things that they're facing, right? But that wealth gets siphoned out for these national movements for people who aren't worried about marriage equality. I mean, it's nice that it's wonderful that has happened, but when you're worried about how you're going to eat tomorrow, the fact that the money has been siphoned out and marriage equality is now a thing, is not really helpful. Yeah.
Thank you.
I want to switch gears, and I want to talk and really rip the Band-Aid off this time, because I know we talked about that a little bit earlier, but I don't think we went deep. Let's really talk about what's going on with the Black community and queer folks within the Black community. I know that over the last several years, my impression of the sound bites and of the media has been that Black folks are cool with queer folks. And I also feel like that is a bit of a kind of fake news, because I don't necessarily see that happening within my own experience, right? And so where are we? Where are we right now with the Black community embracing its queer children?
I think it'd be interesting, just, I think we all got to speak on this, because I want to hear everybody's single perspective on this, because we all definitely we operate in different rooms and have experienced different things. Now, I'm going to speak in terms of, I've been in rooms with important Black men in sports, in politics, and music, and I consider some of them friends of mine or friends of the family. And then they say some homophobic shit, or some well, God didn't do this, and it then just like, it's like, wait, what? And you want freedom, but you don't. I'm trying to find the words to articulate my point without just giving eye signals, but I know a lot of educators.
And the thing about it is like, you've been a friend of my family's. You've known me since you've known me and my family as I was growing up, and yet these are the words that are coming out of your mouth.
Mm-hmm. And freely in my presence. Like we all like to get on, call President Trump a bigot, but at least we know what he is. At least we know when I'm getting, like I had to, I even had to call out my father. like, you know, just and not based on him doing something wrong to me, but, you know, some of the people who were interviewing him had made homophobic comments, or some of the people who he would bring me around had made homophobic comments. And I had to let him know, by the way, did you hear what he said? Why are you fucking with him? I'm sorry, SUNY. I'm letting it go today. But and then also in my experience, the sexualization of Black men is at a all new level for me, in terms of like it. I was gonna be blunt. I have opened my Grindr during these months, and I have seen people say, Black Lives Matter. I'm giving it up for all the Black men. That's my give back. Hope I ain't playing. It's the just wildness in terms of what is acceptable and what is, how are you missing the mark? How are you not receiving the message? How can I convey it to you that I'm a human being and I am valuable just as much as you are? So in terms of the Black experience, I don't want to just rain on the parade and say that I haven't seen things improve, because I have in my own experience. But I'm not involved as much in the Black church. I'm not involved in much, even in the music industry anymore. But I have seen things gradually improve, and especially with now representation in the media, but it's not honest. And it's also, you know, it's miseducation. So that's my experience. I hope I didn't get too lengthy.
I think for me that when you say the Black community is cool with queer people, I agree with that. But I agree that there are certain queer people that the Black community is okay with. They're okay with the temporary queers and I could turn them off when I get sick of them queers, and the non-threatening queers, the ones that they could use for a good laugh, the ones that are convenient, great at makeup. Oh, he does my hair. I'll even use the term work, slay. Oh, that's a good one. These are things that are in their comfort zone. But when you hit too close to home, like I do for Black women, it's not fun anymore. It's, you wear bras too. Oh, that Black guy just looked back at you twice. Oh, your voice. Oh, wow. So there's this dichotomy that is not as gratifying as it would be for, let's say, a flamboyant gay guy that's more entertaining to a Black cis woman, non-threatening, almost foolery, almost, court gestury, that seals it in the bag. Oh, he's gonna give me advice about my, girl, you think he gay? Girl, it's my boyfriend. That's the type of cool, the type that Shade Room likes to pose, because this boy slayed this girl's hair, or, that is cool. For a trans woman, we're brought to people's attention when we've caught sleeping with someone, or, something has been exposed, or something needs to be sensationalized, and it's quickly turned off and is made fun of, or it's criticized, or it's a threatening situation. To me, things are worse because of the internet, and now we see how deep the hatred is from my people,
Yes.
because the sad thing about it, if there's another protest, I'm gonna go out again to protest killing my brothers, because I have 3 brothers, I have a father, I have great heterosexual guy friends, you know, but I will probably come home and feel like crap, like, wow, who's got my back?
Right.
You know,
Who would protest for you?
yeah, who's gonna
Who,
test,
who
you
would
know,
protest for you? Yep.
yeah, and you know, a trans girl, you know, was beaten by 30 Black men during a protest, you know, and it's like I don't need to say her name, because if no one knows who she is now, and like there's nothing you can do, no one's gonna post. Who cares about a post? It's almost like, when are we gonna really have a real discussion with the people that don't like me? Like, don't like me. This is great. Like, this is great. I appreciate this, but I want to look the person that don't like me in the eye, a Lil Boosie or a Waka Flocka, or you know, these guys that create more drama and friction,
Yes.
you know, going to the radio and interviews and stuff, and wondering, why are trans people on television? Why are they being marketed? What am I supposed to tell my children? Dwayne Wade shouldn't dress his son up like a girl, and yeah, it's, yeah. And just in closing, it does sometimes, you said something earlier, it does feel sometimes it's hard for me to express my frustration, because I sometimes do feel like people are gonna kind of put their head down and kind of walk away to the next fun group or the party that's more lit and less uncomfortable to be around, you know. So sometimes I can't or don't want to engage in real conversation about what is happening. But I will say this: as a Black community, we need a real leader. We need a real leader. I know that there are a lot of people working and sacrificing and dedicating way more than I am, you know. But as a community, we're in so much trouble, because we are literally like a flock of sheep that's following people that we only trust, that are not Black, don't know our background, don't understand what we see, that are leading us. We only go by people that we trust. When are we going to have a leader, a real leader, not a Diddy, not a, no disrespect to Diddy, but come on, like a leader,
Not a
Did he just
Beyonce.
coming to terms with his own mistakes?
a
I
leader.
mean,
We need
like,
that. Someone that could say, all of us need to come together and respect each other. Stop. Like, I love Beyonce. I love her. But I've never seen her post, stop killing my trans sisters, stop killing my sisters. When was the last time, outside of Miley Cyrus or Katy Perry, or when have we had a powerful Black woman in the music industry say, don't stop killing my trans girls, my sisters, my sisters? There's something they're missing, that they're not genuinely wanting to do that. Don't do it to humor me or to feel obligated, or because you're
Or to get followers.
to do that.
Right.
Yeah. So
Antoine, I want to hold some space for you.
You know, it's so damn, I don't even have a word for it. It's just so damn right now, you know, it's how I feel. And I just, the thought that keeps rolling in my head is, why is there such fear of a Black trans woman? Why is there fear in her power, her strength, her beauty, her capability, her possibility, her intelligence? Why is that? Why? And I don't know where those conversations start outside of this kind of space. I don't know who those people are to have those conversations in the spaces that those conversations need to be had, which is where the fear is the most palpable, you know, within our Black communities. And that has been something for me that my spirit is fighting to figure the hell out before this call, during this call, after this. And it's just like, if we could just beam into every person's mind, like, what is your fear? Figure it out. Like, what is, like, talk about it. Talk to yourself about it first and foremost, because if you can't talk to yourself about it, you're not talking to anyone else about it. That's for damn sure. And that is really about as much as I know to offer to this question.
Yeah.
I really I want to know, like, what is the fear? Why is the fear there? Because I can't conceive of any justifiable answer. No answer would be enough, because I just don't know.
Hoper D, do you want, I can think of a couple of origins of that fear, but I want to hold some space. Do you want to address that? And I'll come in with my thoughts after.
I think that it's less about there being an idea of actual fear manifesting itself, right? Because that's why I don't particularly like to use the phrase transphobic. I like to use the phrase trans-loathing, right? That seems a little bit more suitable, because people aren't afraid of trans people. They don't see us and run away from us like cockroaches, right? They dislike us. There's a genuine hate for us. There is this pain almost in some spaces. Like, when you see it, there is like this like loathing to the point of like actual physical pain for some people. And I think that a lot of that comes from this space of just it being inundated into the culture, right? And so it's never been questioned. And so when I'm forced to question it, it's just like when a parent is asked a very intelligent question by their child, and they're like, because I say so, right? And that response isn't because, you know, the child did something wrong. It's because you did not have an answer. It's because you didn't know in that space, or it was because you felt like in that moment, your power was taken away from you as the authoritative figure in that space. And I think that what trans women do, and what all trans people do, is we take away the authoritative space from people to define us in that moment. And so when I walk into the room, when Dee walks into the room, when Amaya Scott walks into the room, when T.S. Madison walks into the room, there is this new authority that comes in with us that says, this is what I am, right? And no matter what you know to be true, no matter what you've Googled before I've come in this space, what I am presenting to you is all that matters. And I think that in that is like a silent way to tell people to respect you. And I think that people have a problem with that. Folks have an inherent problem with respecting things that don't come with a precursor, that don't come with this understanding beforehand. So there is no warning label on a trans woman when she walks in, she's beautiful, and you have the same reaction to her that you do to cis women. There is no precursor when you've been chatting it up with this amazing girl at the hair salon, and then you find out that she's trans when you follow her on Instagram, and she has just as many, if not more, followers than you. There is no precursor when you're sitting in class and you assume, or your assumption has been for your entire life, that all trans women were sex workers and that we were all stupid and none of us could actually be in school. And here you are next to this amazing girl who passed the bar and is like, I'm murdering this course, right? And so there is, there's protest in our existence. And I think that doesn't equate to the fear, but that equates to the loathing. Because when these people aren't even supposed to exist, how dare you succeed? How dare you be happy? How dare you walk into this space with your head held high? How dare you be a millionaire at any point in your life, right? How dare you? Because you're not even supposed to be here. And then the fact that I can't do anything but respect it makes me want to reject that respect, which turns into this hate, which turns into this loathing, which then inundates the way in which I talk about you to my friends, the way that I talk about you to my family, the way that I talk about you to my children, my future children, the children of my friends, right? And it becomes this vicious cycle of tearing down these people who you felt didn't deserve a space in society anyway. And so it shouldn't matter that we do away with them in these ways that are harmful, in these ways that are ignorant, and in these ways that essentially prevent human people that are a part of society, that contribute to society, from flourishing and continuing to add to the society that you live in as well. And I think that people don't think about that.
And I think also with that loathing that you recognize so wonderfully is then the person who is feeling the loathing, they find ways to quench it. And the eradication of what they think the source of the loathing is external, which is they think it comes from that trans woman. And like, oh, if I quench that that object, which is what they've made, the trans person, they think that will solve the loathing, when no, that loathing is in you. It's in your spirit, it's in your heart, and you need to look into that and stop loathing yourself. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Hope. Ooh, thank you.
That emasculation of Black men by white society, and at the same time hypersexualization of Black men by white society, which is in itself psychotic, that is the source of that loathing, right?
Absolutely.
And so then I see someone who isn't supposed to be here in my space. And I think that for so many of our communities, we, for as much as Black women are in charge of families and run things, Black men are very much deferred to in our societies. Black men are very much at the forefront.
Come on, Dr. Clark. You almost there. Go ahead. Keep going.
Right. So if we're fighting to reach a standard that white folks have set for us, particularly as Black men, then Black trans women are really threatening. Right. And that loathing. Go ahead, Hope. Finish it off for me.
Because that's it. That's it. When you hold masculinity, when all Black men had left was masculinity. Yep. When all Black men could be was Black men, how dare you reject this thing that was our only gifts, right? How dare you come in and reject this thing that makes us the hierarchy of the Black community, and then still be great at being a part of the hierarchy of the Black community, right? There has to be conversations around the ways in which Black men commodify their masculinity, so that way they understand that it can't be taken or given away. As long as you acknowledge it, you've got it. A Black trans woman can't take it away from you. Black cis women can't take it away from you. White men, white women, white communities cannot take that away from you. The job that you have, the person that you're sexually attracted to, does not take away the idea that you are still inundated with manhood, right? And I think that is something that a lot of Black men just struggle with being able to realize and actualize. But once they do, I feel bad. I feel bad for all of the people that were depending on Black male ignorance.
Yes.
I do. I do. I feel so bad for all of the people that are getting their lives off of, for all of the people that are hanging back and laughing and giggling at the destruction of the Black community as per the Black cishet male toxicity, because we're getting to a place where there are more flower children than thugs and gangsters. Mm-hmm. We're getting to a place where there are more Jaden Smiths than Lil Yachty's, right? And the day that, you know, some of these people who are trying to set this system up and who are trying to continue this hope-teppery, you know, thought process, the day that they look up and realize that the fields are filled with poppies and not, you know, weed and guns, it's going to be over. But it's going to be beautiful for our community, both cis and queer. And it's going to be, I think, one of the most affirming days for Black trans women to be able to look up and no longer feel othered, right? Because of who we are within the constructs of our own community. But it's going to take time. The good thing is, I think that finally I have faith that we're getting there. And all we have to do is continue to remind ourselves to have conversations like this, but to also have them in the spaces. I think that what Dee said was absolutely right. We have to have these conversations in the spaces where these people who hate us are. Because talking amongst each other and preaching to the choir is cool, but we do need to talk to the Wakas. We need to invite, you know, Boosie to this conversation, because as uncomfortable as it might be, those are things that stick with you, regardless of whether or not, you know, you want to hear it in that moment. You're going to go back home and think about that. The next time you see a trans woman, you're going to think about that. The next time you see something on television, you're going to think about that. But if I never implant that seed, then you can continue to go off of the dirt that you've already been filling yourself with, and that doesn't do anybody any justice.
So much. We are quickly coming to the close of our conversation. So let me try to pull it back together. First of all, let me say that if you allow yourself, you can be super empowered by the strength of Black trans women. So when I look at the two of you, I am like, oh, what do the possibilities of my life hold, right? I am empowered by the journey that you have taken to be who you are. And so I know that when people allow themselves to actually investigate this, to actually create friendships, to actually move past the inhumanity that people hold, that they will find such strength from those connections. So as we get ready to close, I want to just bring this back to the college campus, because I think it's important. Again, we're at the Spectrum Conference. Do kind of in maybe 30 seconds or 45 seconds or so, can you think of something that our campuses can do that can help particularly Black queer folks on our campuses to hold space, create space, investigate self? What are some things that, even from your own college experiences, or just things that we could do today that our campuses could enact? Or how do we empower our students to be themselves on our campus?
Well, I don't know if you have this at your campus, but the first thing that comes to my mind is a support group. Even something when I first started transitioning, a transgender support group was very intimate. I felt safe and I learned a lot in these support groups. But I think the key with this support group is that we were able to invite our family or our closest friends or our lovers or spouses or children. The first time I ever cried in a support group, because they're kind of draining, everyone's kind of like spilling their guts, and it's the first time I ever cried in a support group. There was these beautiful children, like 6 children there, and I found out later that they were all trans, and they were just remarkable. It was like watching a movie. They were like, I'm not just saying this, they were totally angelic. They were so beautiful, so smart, and so inquisitive, and it was inspiring. So I think the possibilities, not just the trans group, but all of the queer umbrella, a support group where people could create their family outside of their biological family is very crucial.
I would say something that I know campuses struggle because I've worked on Title IX reform, but in terms of mental health services, making them accessible. I think one of the biggest things that we've realized in this time of the pandemic is Zoom, what we're on right now. Having these conversations, making it, it's hard for a therapist to be the therapist for the entire student body, as most counselors are. There's like one of you. But what needs to happen is you have to take a look at the community and identify them. Each student on your campus, that is your job as an educator. That's what you've signed up for, to educate, to caretake, to elevate. So if you really take that responsibility seriously, then take it seriously.
I would say I went to college in Springfield, Missouri. And, I was one of few Black kids from kindergarten to college graduation, even into the past 22 years of my professional career as a performer. And when you don't see you don't know you can exist. You don't know you have possibilities. So on campuses, it comes down to what are the images that you have on banners, on walls, tacked up on cork boards, whatever that is. What is the language you're using? Also, within the community of that college, what resources are available? Can those be pulled into the college to have conversations with the students? Talk to the students. They might know. They probably will know. Hell, they know so much more than so many of us these days. So ask, and don't be afraid as educators, as deans, as adult leaders to say, I don't know how to find these things. Will you help me find these things and bring these things in? It's like, don't let, the perception of your inadequacy stop you from helping those that you want to help. Like, get over ourselves. It's like me, putting my foot in my mouth. It's only going to be sour for a few minutes, but then I'm gonna figure out something and someone's going to help me out. So, and that is a lesson I learned today. So that's what I would say and suggest.
So I have to say this because I just want to paint a picture just for the class. I went to college at Indiana, and there was a picture, a mural of the history of Indiana of the Ku Klux Klan in my lecture hall. These images matter, as Antuan just said.
Thank you for that. Dee?
No, Hope.
Oh, I'm sorry, Hope.
Be intentional about the work that you're doing for your students. Don't just put things into place for the sake that you want to be able to say that you have them there or to continue to get grant funding for those students. Actually be intentional about the work and what that work does, not only for the safety of your students, but for the betterment of your student body. Happy students and students who feel well adjusted to their university do better and add more culture and add more richness and add ways for you to get more funding to your organization and to your university. But I think that also there's going to have to be spaces where there are inclusivity trainings that are mandatory, not just for the upper level staff, not just for the deans and their friends, but like for every single department on college campuses. I went to an HBCU in rural, Montgomery, Alabama. And when it gets to the point where my best friend literally had to stop a math class to check my teacher and say, look, we get what you're doing. It's she. Could you stop doing that in the middle of a lecture? You know what I'm saying? And then to actually have like people who I knew were like bigots and homophobes be like, yeah, like you're overdoing it. Like, you know, I think that there's a space that is needed for intentional training of the staff and all of the people that are encompassing, and just being very intentional about the way that you want to protect your students.
Helping people to understand that that is such a level of violence that it doesn't matter that somebody didn't hit you, but that enduring that in class on a daily is a serious level of violence that in many ways is worse than if somebody had just walked up and slapped you, right? Yes. Oh, yes, of course. So we are at the end of our time. I want to just tell you that I've had an amazing time having conversation with you. I hope that our audience who can't, I think I see people applauding, right? There are people out there applauding this and have taken notes and will bring all of this back to college campuses. I know that we are running late and I apologize, Delcy, but I want to just say one more thing. Privilege your queer student of color experience. When you bring people to your campuses, create opportunities for them, not just to train the entire university, create opportunities for them to get in contact with people who look like themselves. That is a great thing that we have been doing at the Binghamton University campus. So thank you so much, all of you, for taking your afternoon out to attend the SUNY Spectrum Conference with us. And I am wishing you all the best of health in this pandemic, and Godspeed. I'll turn it back over to Delcy.
Love you, Delcy.
Thank you all so much for such an incredible session. It was truly amazing to see such needed conversation to be had, and being a queer Afro-Latina, so much that was discussed resonates with me, especially the representation on campus and making sure queer students have that outlet. And when I was in college, being an advocate and being a support system to other queer students is absolutely necessary. And again, thank you all so much for being a part of this important conversation, and for all the attendees that were present. And with that, I hope everyone has an incredible rest of the evening. Please be sure to tune in tomorrow for the rest of Spectrum programming. And I hope everyone stays healthy and safe and is taking care of themselves during such uncertain and unfortunate times that our nation is facing. Bye, everyone.
Wear a mask.
Wear a mask.
Wear a mask.
Bye, everyone.
Ciao. Thank you both so much, and I didn't get a chance to thank our other panelists, but thank you. And